Welcome again to the Visual Studio 2013 and C# programming series, Tutorial 4. I think I might have misspoke on the Tutorial 3, but let's get it right. We are on Tutorial 4. Here's where we left off. We left off with a working application that allows a user to select either hello or goodbye as a radio button, press the display button, and get a message back. Let's go ahead and run that. So here it is. Select a message option and then press display. If you select hello, we get the hello world. If we select goodbye, we get the goodbye world. And if we happen to do a non-selection, which would be if we open it up, there is nothing selected, and we just press display, we did not make a choice. So we've covered basically all the aspects of what could happen within our code. And here's the code that we wrote. Now, because I had to rush a little bit in the last tutorial, I want to do a review. So this tutorial 4 is really not going to be adding on to anything that we have already done, but it's going to be kind of going back over what we've been doing. So a review, if you will. In the beginning, we simply started a WPF application. We talked a little bit about the opening interface with Visual Studio and the different areas available with properties and toolbox when we're doing some type of layout. So let's just discuss a little bit about the application, because it's very important that you understand the application that somebody wants. If you become a programmer, somebody's going to come up and say, look, I need an application that allows the user to select different items, and I want them to be this items, and maybe we categorize it. And there's going to be this kind of descriptional document, or maybe even just a discussion in a meeting about what they want the application to do. Usually there doesn't get too much discussion in about how they want it to look, because they expect that to kind of come out with what you're doing in the code side. But I think that you need to think about a lot more stuff than that. In this particular application, we didn't think about too much. We created a WPF. It gave us a window. We put on a message that would be seen by the user that said select something, and based on his selection, we are going to display something. We talked a little bit about down here in the bottom, which is the XAML area, which is really the layout and the look of the window. We talked about how we can fit all. See, even though it's small, it will always fit it all, and you can look at your information here. So here's what I want you to get out of these first 3 tutorials, is that you can create an application. You got to think a little bit about the application. With WPF, it splits it into 2 separate areas where you can work at just making the look of your application, and then you have the area where you can work on just how you want it to respond to different things. Also in the code here, we didn't talk about it too much because I was rushing a little bit at the end, but we covered what possibilities the application could present to the user. One of those, of course, was that neither one of the radio buttons was selected. We could choose to have one of those radio buttons selected at the time that the form would open, or at the time the window would open, and then we wouldn't have needed to have that extra item in here that says, what do you do if nobody has selected anything? We talked about how the individualized identifier for button 1, button 2, how the dot provides you a list, IntelliSense, allowing you to select items that are already there so that you don't have to worry about spelling mistakes, or and that it will help you be guided through the creation of the code. We talked about the different areas that you can do the same thing. For instance, we can go into the properties over here to write things, or we can to change things, or if there's an item inside the description of a element that's in our window, we can simply change it down here in our XAML file area that allows us to do that. We have icons that provide us split views and other things. So that's all the interface that you need to get used to and come up with what is comfortable for you while you're working. So at the end of the day, I want to say that this was a very simple application just to get you started. We were able to use different aspects of the Visual Studio IDE. As an example, the start button to run the application, or going into debug and then debugging runs the application. The saving of the application by using Control S, or simply by using the icon up here, or going into File and saving all. There's always multiple ways to do things. We talked about how the Solution Explorer provides you a view at all the references and the elements of your overall project that you're using and that you're interacting with. We talked about the toolbox over here that allows you to drag and drop onto your windows, or if you want to keep it open or hidden, using the pin control to leave something open, and also creating a environment that is comfortable and usable for you to be an efficient programmer. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to continue on with Visual Studio 2013 and the C# programming. But when we get to tutorial 5, which will be the one following this, we're really going to get into also kind of the beginning process of an application. Somebody brings you a description of what they want. There's some issue or some item that needs to be resolved, or there's something that needs to happen. And we're going to step through making an application from beginning to end that is more of a real world situation. And during that process, we're going to get very familiar with using Visual Studio. We're going to interact between windows. We're going to pass information between windows as as a user navigates between the different areas. We're going to incorporate some audio file playing, some video file playing. We're going to talk about a lot of different things of what it takes to really do an application and have it so that it's going to target as many people as possible. One of those things is going to be the initial setup. For instance, if you go into our Hello World and right click on it and go to Properties, the properties information of this application is going to come up. If you look here, you have .NET Framework 4.5. Well, is that really what we want? I mean, this is a simple application. Do we need to use all the features that are in 4.5? Because at the time that we deploy this application, if somebody, for instance, was going to try to run this on Vista, Vista comes with 3.0 included in the install, but that person may have never installed 4.5 on their computer. They may not be updating the .NET framework on their computer, which means that when you do your setup or deployment installer, you will have to include the 4.5 file, or you will have to require them to go out and install the 4.5 as a secondary operation in order to make your application work. So there are things to think about when you are going to create an application and what your target is. Now, for me, as strange as it may seem, I am able to get by almost all the time simply by using .NET 3.0. And it's not because all my applications are very simple. There's a lot that go back and forth and are complicated and are transferring things between windows and all that. But to be honest, that's usually the biggest thing that you're doing. There are specific advantages to these other .NET frameworks, but you need to be getting into some fairly complicated applications to really take advantage of those added features that are in there. Now, with that said, the added features that are in those .NET frameworks all still remain supporting the 3.0. So Vista had the 3.0 included and installed when it was in there. Windows 7, as an example, had another version, but it is the next version up. So each Windows operating system that was installed after the days of Vista still have .NETs included in the operating system install, which means that if you can write your software based in 3.0, you should be able to make your application run without any extra additions of installs of a different .NET framework or anything like that. Simply by having them install it and it will run, and that would target Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1. You can get your application to run on all those platforms if you can run, or if you can create your application simply using the 3.0 .NET framework. So normally, unless I have some very specific requirement, I will tend to set up my projects to run with the .NET 3.0. With that said, that's going to be the end of this tutorial. But when we start the next tutorial, it's still going to be a WPF program. It's still going to be Visual Studio 2013 and C# programming. But we are going to build a real-world application. We're going to set up the properties here so that we can target as many operating systems as possible. And we're going to do a lot of different things while we're building that application that should get you used to how things go, logical thinking, trying to create the structure of your application. And I hope that it will help you. So for that, this is the end of tutorial 4, which would be the review of the basics of Visual Studio 2013 and doing a little bit of simple programming with the C# language. And I hope you enjoyed these tutorials, and I hope you'll continue to come back and visit for more tutorials in the future. Thanks for now. Goodbye.